Bitcoin will reprice the entire world. So what that means is that Bitcoin becomes infinite in purchasing power. Saylor is a good actor in this space. In time, he will too face a choice, and we'll see which choice he makes. If it stays decentralized and secure, it's not if, it reprices the entire world for sure. Not maybe. People say they want free markets. They actually don't want free markets. They want, in 2017, where I literally went to zero, 47 years old, have three small young kids, and be negative, have zero, completely zero. And realize that on the back of that, at zero, I had everything I could ever want.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Jeff Booth back to the podcast. Jeff is an entrepreneur, board member, general partner at Ego Death Capital, and best-selling author of The Price of Tomorrow, Why Deflation is the Key to an Abundant Future. Great to see you, Jeff.
You too. Great to see you again.
So today I thought I wanted to help myself and my audience dive a little bit deeper into your ideas so we can move further down the rabbit hole into a world built on truth, hope, and abundance. And what I've noticed is that many Bitcoiners and people agree that the natural state of the free market is deflation. But since we've never actually seen a truly free market, how do we get past that?
Yeah, I think it's just time in hearing that over and over again. So anything like this, I would say, for the first thing, is it true? So maybe let's do that. We'll explore, is it true? And then if it was true, what would it look like for our brains to understand something that's never existed before, right? It would be the cognitive dissonance. It would say nothing about the new thing that was true. It would say our mental models have a hard time adjusting to the new thing that's true. So that's why it's hard. When I think about our own brains and I think about neurons firing and how we learn and how we practice something over and over and over again. And if we read something, a whole bunch of literature on some narrow topic over and over, we get really good at that thing. But we miss the bigger picture and some things that change everything that we thought have and those neurons practicing essentially or those firing and creating connections in our brain make it hard to see new connections because we're so deep inside our silo that the new thing is so different. So it's just a natural, it would be a natural part of us understanding something that's completely radically changed. It takes time for new neurons to fire for us to understand that a different pattern, and then move to that new pattern. So that's the time I think it takes. So again, we jumped into the time. That's why. Now we should jump into, is it true? Right. So is the natural state of the free market deflation? And everyone, if you just ask them that question, or posed it as a statement, they would nod their head like you're doing now. It's amazing. It's amazing because what it's actually saying to you is you can feel the truth, even though if your brain can't wrap your head around it. The nodding is actually you recognizing the clarity, the truth in those words. But if we go a little deeper on why is that true, it's true because we make up the market. We are both buyers and sellers, and we choose in our lives to gain more value. We constantly choose to gain more value. And any entrepreneur or anything that is created new that has to compete against what was there before. And the only reason we would choose it is if it gave us more value in our lives. So you have a global system where us as actors, both as sellers or buyers, whether it's a service or a product, sellers and buyers, we are part of it. And if we choose more value and the entrepreneurs have to compete with everything that existed before, then the output of that has to be deflation. That
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah.
So, it's impossible to 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 dismiss what I just said. It's a first principle. It has to be true. If do you have before we go any further, do you have any pushback on what I just said? Is there anything that I just said that doesn't feel right?
Only that we've never seen it. So it doesn't feel like it's possible because we've never seen it. And we keep
Per-
getting told that 2% inflation is normal.
perfect. So let's now shift gears and let's go into the opposite system where our belief is reinforcing the world we live in, and so in 2% inflation is normal. Um, so why does so if the natural state of the free market is deflation, and we've already said that that's true, um, then and where does inflation come from? Where does the 2% come from? Because the natural rate should be the productivity rate of the world, which would be negative. So it might be -3, it might be -5, it might be -10%. As technology went faster, it might be -20%. So so where does 2% come from? So what is that? Where does that inflation come from?
I would say the printing of money.
Exactly. It comes from the manipulation of money. Whatever you wanted to call it, you could call it QE, you could have called it fiscal spending, you could have called it monetary easing, you could call it liquidity. It comes from the manipulation of money to create more currency units to be able to create inflation. It's the only place it comes from in a longer term. It could come from, in a short term, a scarcity in the market or an earthquake that created something that people raise their prices, but long term it can't. Um, so over a longer term, it only comes from that. It only comes from the manipulation of money. So then it forces us down another question. Why have we built society, and why have we always built society on it, and who would win and who would lose on a society that has to steal the productivity that should flow to all of us to convince us that the manipulation of money was normal? Instead of saying manipulation of money or liquidity, say theft of your time, theft in money was normal. You couldn't survive in a system that allowed the free market to work. You had to have something that stole people's time. So, so instead of saying, what would it look like with liquidity or QE, just reinsert, what would it look like if it was okay for people to steal other people's money? What would society look like? What would they believe? What would they, um, and, so you can start to see, and does a productive economy require 2% inflation? And there's a harder question, because most people would say, yeah, it does. Um, and then instead of saying 2% inflation, does a productive economy require theft in money? Because all an economy is trade with other people, new ideas, competing to provide you value. Why would that require theft? And if you lived in such a system that required theft, and you contributed to such a system that required theft, wouldn't you expect that as technology moved faster trying to free you, that system would move faster in the opposite way trying to control you?
Why is that the case?
So because it has to, because we built a system based on credit, and that system based on debt, where money is loaned into existence, must grow forever, or the money gets wiped out. There is no money. If it allowed deflation, all of the money that you think is money, it collapses, and every asset value that is backed by that tremendous amount of debt also collapses. So every single thing that you measure your life in collapses to zero. and it wouldn't collapse to zero because what would happen is dictators would rush into the void and convince you to allow them to control it for you, right? But ultimately, that system cannot allow deflation. So it's not a, and people conflate two things. They conflate, um, does the credit-based system, can the credit-based system allow deflation? The answer is no. And they conflate that topic for, is deflation the natural state of the free market? So what those mean is we've never lived in a global free market. We've always lived in a control system. And all of the books and anything we've ever read reinforces that control system and reinforces all the neurons in your brain to think that's normal. And it's totally not normal. Well, it's normal for the past, but Bitcoin imposes different rule structure on society.
Hi there. I'd like to ask you for a quick favor. Most of my viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you find value in these videos and would like to help me get the word out about Bitcoin, please like and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate your support. So now we have a new government, at least in the new US, that is cutting expenses and talking like they're going to change a lot of things, which is good. But in the long run, they're not changing the system.
They're not cutting expenses. They're perceived cutting expenses. The reality is debt is rising faster than it was, and it has to. So it's a perception of, and most people are completely fooled by that. There has to be way more printing. There has to be way more decentralization out of that system. That system cannot resolve that paradox from that system. And it's been building over time because the debt built slowly and then suddenly, like we say, slowly then suddenly. Yeah, no. So the one thing I'd just say is, because this is so hard to understand over and over again, it's just worth, and people find themselves in the system change inside the system that is getting destroyed, and they're spending more and more of their time and energy getting sucked in, and more fear, more, and all those responses are dragging them in more of who's going to fix it inside, who's better on top of the system, is just more control going away from you. And but people are fighting inside that system, and they're actually strengthening the thing that they're scared of the most, but they don't see themselves in it. And that's why I just said, if you just pull yourself out as much as you can and you just keep repeating, the natural state of the free market is deflation. Keep repeating it. And if that, so you could push back and you say it's not true, then tell me why it's not true. But if it is true, then the next thing you should ask is, what system am I spending my energy in? And you'll start to see yourself in what I'm describing. Yeah. So now we have Bitcoin, and you have mentioned that Bitcoin will survive as long as it stays decentralized and secure. So what is the probability that it does? So when I said it will survive, I would say it's actually way stronger than that. Then it will survive. Bitcoin will reprice the entire world. If you own one Bitcoin, you own 121 million of all of what will ever come. And not all of which will ever come in value as you perceive it today, or the purchasing power of what you receive it today, in a world that has faster and faster deflation. So what that means is that Bitcoin becomes infinite in purchasing power in time. And why is that? And so there's 5 aspects of Bitcoin that those combined make it very different. Open, anybody can move to it anywhere in the world, doesn't require somebody's permission. Decentralized, secure, protocol bounded by energy. So you have an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. Protocols are winner take all. They're not technologies. Protocols build in layers, and there is, you're on it or you're off it. In the internet, North Korea is off of it, right? Look at what happens to their citizens. Everybody else on it. Can't negotiate with it. It imposes a new discipline. So, and it's bounded by energy. So the way that mining works, the way the consensus mechanism works to audit the mining and make sure that they've followed the rules, is it bounds it to energy. So you have something bounded to energy in a system that's decentralized and secure. So now you only have to worry about two pieces. Could it be broken? Could it be centralized or become insecure? And there should be nothing else you would worry about, because if it stays decentralized and secure, it's not if, it reprices the entire world for sure. Not maybe. It's every single thing. Your houses, the way of life, your political systems, every single thing is changed by this. There's nothing untouched by it if it stays decentralized and secure. And so I've spent a lot of time, tons of time, thinking about where it wouldn't, where it would break. And I can't think of, not that we wouldn't have short term, somebody thinks it's going to, short term price influences and everything else, but I can't think of one. I won't get into it on this podcast of where this is going to break. And the primary reason why I can't get into one, where it's going to break, is when you actually understand that we are Bitcoin. We literally, by running nodes, by contributing to this network, the more that you do, what you're doing on your podcast, teaching a whole bunch more people on why this is so important in their lives. And some of those people will go deeper and they'll also run nodes and they'll contribute and they'll spend in Bitcoin. We are both the map and the territory. And so the more energy we're giving to the system, and the more honest, that's a truthful, honest protocol, and more people that understand it, and they unplug from this other broken, terrible system that's just sucking out their energy, and they move to this beautiful system that's competitive but cooperative, right? That everyone wins on it. They're never going back. And so we at the bottom of that is the consensus mechanism that keeps it secure, that keeps it decentralized. And you're constantly looking, you're vigilant for where are there attacks, where could there be attacks, where are the risks. And many of the people that are in Bitcoin, I know myself, you're so far out in front of seeing these attacks and investing in things that prevent those attacks, that when people talk about some of the attacks, you kind of go, huh, that's cute. You think because you realize how far this is moving beyond that.
You've mentioned that one of the biggest attack vectors is us measuring Bitcoin in US dollars.
Yeah, and let me say this. So let's imagine, right? There's a bunch of nodes, and those nodes are you, me, a bunch of people in this, and then the economic nodes on top. We're spending our money on top on top of this, and then there's a bunch of others that have aggregated their Bitcoin into a centralized system. Let's say that because the US dollar has to still be a centralized system. It has to be an inflationary system. And what that means is people will trust that because they're measuring in that. And they'll trust the ETFs. And many will go outside of self-custody and trust somebody else. They'll pay a fee to introduce counterparty risk because they're so used to trusting other people. And they'll trust the US dollar, and they'll trust or a different currency, and they'll continue to trust that. These systems are opposites. Free market is deflationary. We know that's true. This system can't be. So whether this system is backed by Bitcoin or backed by gold, if it's inflationary then it has to rehypothecate the Bitcoin or the gold. It has to suppress that price. It has to do all of these things, and it has to attack the free market in time. And so if you have your Bitcoin there, it's not your Bitcoin, but it doesn't change my Bitcoin, because when that system says you can only use one day, I wouldn't like it, that wouldn't even happen today, but in one day, if that system said you can only use US coin, US version of Bitcoin, all of the people running nodes would say, take your US coin, and it'll look a lot like Bitcoin Cash today. Right? Um, and and there has to be economic activity to be able to continue. That might be a chain split. It might create a whole bunch of things. It might create some pressure, but it actually didn't change Bitcoin at all. It just changed Bitcoin for the people that are using the other Bitcoin.
So would you say then that even investing in MicroStrategy is investing in the fiat system?
It is investing in the fiat system. Now, you can make. I hold some MicroStrategy in my RSP portfolio because because I have to hold it in stocks. I can't hold it, and so I think MicroStrategy is a good bet within there, and I think Saylor does a really good job. So so, but I am also aware of the risk of that the opportunity and the risk of that. And I would never hold all of my Bitcoin in there. So, um, so right now, I think Saylor is a good actor in this space. In time, in time, he will too face a choice of which system. He will face a vote of which system if the U.S. dollar did that, and then went after Saylor to this is what you have to do. The community in time will see which choice he makes. And lots of our friends, lots of people will go through that same thing as this imposes a new discipline on society that we're not used to.
And how far out do you think that is, that he has to make that choice?
Um, it's hard to know. It's really hard to know because um, there's so many different tail events, and the world's breaking down in its current fiat structure. And there's so many. There's going to be a race for more Bitcoin. There's going to be a race for, um, and so I don't think you could consolidate enough of it in the U.S. centric model to be able to do that. Now, through Tether, if everybody used it through Tether and different stable coins and everything else, there is some centralization risk. Um, but I don't think it, um, in the end, not that it wouldn't be a war, not that it wouldn't be like 2017 in the block size wars, with with a whole bunch more at stake. But but it'd probably be the same thing in the end.
Yeah. So I asked many of my guests, will Bitcoin fail as a medium of exchange if it fails as a store of value? And I'd say most people don't really understand what you mean when you say this. So could you just explain this a little bit more to us?
Yeah. And again, you just had it inverted. Will its store of value will fail if it's not a medium of exchange, and why? And then when I say that, people go, uh, baloney. Gold is a store of value, um, and it didn't fail because it's not a medium of exchange. And I go, oh really? Well, gold's price should be, if it wasn't manipulated, should be about $80,000 an ounce, in a free market. But suppression of gold derivative contracts through pieces of paper that you can print forever can suppress gold forever, and that's centralized. So gold did fail as a store of value, and it's failed multiple times as it gets repriced, centralized, taken over by governments in a 6102 attack or something. It's constantly failing as a store of value.
Mm.
So how could you see yourself in an inflationary environment, and that inflationary environment has to centralize Bitcoin, where Bitcoin didn't fail if you're a part of that. It has to. So gold is in fact, people that are saying, well, gold didn't fail are actually making my point, because it's failed numerous times in history as a store of value, or it would have been priced at $80,000 an ounce today. And so Bitcoin, if you wanted to use the same example, if it got centralized and then suppressed in price and suppressed forever, and you didn't control it because it was all paper Bitcoin, and you didn't have it off in your own exchange, that you were auditing it, how would you know? How would you know that there weren't just paper and derivatives contracts forever? You wouldn't. It would be suppressed. So it would fail as a store of value, or it would fail as a proper store of value. Still would do. I think it would still do well if you're measuring it in a US piece of paper, but it certainly wouldn't be the first global free market that ever existed, and it would certainly be manipulated for forever.
Yeah. The funny thing is, when I ask people in Nigeria, or yesterday I spoke to someone in Bali who is using Fedi in Bali,
Yeah,
and then in Nigeria, they're like, well, we're already using it. We know it is being used. It's more the Western world.
yeah, yeah. So and that's what I see too. I see the growth of this as a medium of exchange. It's funny when people talk about this right now. So people are just starting to see it as a store of value who didn't previously see it as a store of value, and so firm in it's only a store of value, when a lot of people saw it as both for a long time, and how it emerges. Like it's just people's understanding of this thing, that 2 years ago they were totally against it as a as a store of value. Now they're coming to terms with it as a store of value, but they're totally against it as a medium of exchange. It's, again, this has nothing to do with Bitcoin. This has to do with people's cognitive dissonance, that they can't understand it. Nothing to do with Bitcoin.
What other areas of cognitive dissonance do you think that people are experiencing when it comes to Bitcoin?
Well, I think, like I said, it has to touch every single institution, political party, way of life. If trade is between humans and we choose more value, and 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 the world's never looked like that, or it hasn't looked like that for a long time, it's then we live in a control system, and all of our isms, Marxism, communism, totalitarianism, capitalism, all of those are just different versions, uh, different versions of a control system to make you think you're on the right side of one. But capitalism, the way that we have capitalism today, capitalism can't exist how most people think it can exist with manipulated money. It just looks like crony capitalism. Free markets that people say they want free markets, they actually don't want free markets. They want free markets where they gain value, but nobody else can. They want controlled markets. And so they're voting all of their things, all of their actions are showing their own hypocrisy. Like, name a Bitcoiner that isn't can't wait for all of the governments to print money. It's crazy. Like, and what are they saying? What are they saying? What are they saying? My asset's going to go up faster, right, than other assets, and this inflationary collapse is going to hurt everybody else. Where is if they allowed deflation from that, there was no printing, their asset would be just worth just as much. Just everything else would be fall to the floor. But so it's our own hypocrisy that we think we are the market. We're both sides, seller and buyer, and we think our houses can go up forever, and everything we purchase should come down forever. So what I just described there, because it's so embedded in every single institution, decision we make, everything, It is us. It has to touch all of those things. It has to touch everything, not just the economy, not just how we think about ourselves and our role in what the world looks like. It has to touch.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around that because most people focus on that price and exactly what you said, because when governments print money, Bitcoin goes up, everything goes up, and that is the focus. And I shared with you before that where I struggle a little bit is yes, I still invest in the stock market. I understand that in retirement accounts, we invest in MicroStrategy and other vehicles. And so many people that I speak to also do. I want to get to the point where I can go all in on Bitcoin. That is my goal. I see people like you. I spoke to Mark van Versendaal, who's completely living on the Bitcoin standard, and they don't say it's easy, but much happier life. I feel that part of me invests in the stock market as a little bit of a hedge because I'm not an entrepreneur. If Bitcoin doesn't make it, there's that little bit of a hedge. You mentioned it's just time. Do you think it's just time?
Yeah. So let me my own view of you. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're you're working in Bitcoin to help other people understand this. So to say that you're not in this, right? 100%, 95%, that would be like you're so far ahead of most. And you're probably seeing that abundance in your life expand, right? Out of the very same thing. As you've moved more time, things get better. Um, it's not up to anyone to tell anyone else how much time they should spend. They should spend, the free market is a series of choices, and you should do whatever is right for you in your own risk portfolio. For me, I can only tell you what's right for me. Right. I can't tell you what's right for you. And for me to be able to understand this, I had to pick it apart at so many levels so that I understood what it really was. Um, and and then I felt so when I first started in Bitcoin, I probably had a 2% allocation, right? Just like most people, okay, I'm going to buy it as a hedge. And then as I understood more and more, I realized it wasn't Bitcoin that had the risk. It was the other system that had the risk. And Bitcoin was anti-risk. It was the world I wanted to leave to my children. So so I wanted to spend more time, and so it was a selfish reason for moving more time. And every time I moved more time and more energy into it, things improved. Things I got to spend my time around other people who were doing the same, and you could see that reflection um, everywhere. But that takes time for each person to come to. Um, and I don't know. I wouldn't want somebody to make a decision to go all in. So so I made a decision, but to make that decision, I also had to realize the risk of centralization and security. And then as I got comfortable, I went, wow, um, I actually fuel the thing I want. By spending my time in whichever system, I actually help create that system or don't. And so my time matters here, and I'm going to spend my time where I want to spend my time. Um, the but that was for where I am on that. That's a long stretch. So does somebody want to spend 10,000 hours trying to disprove this first? They might not. That might be too much of a first step. So you do the work. Um, and 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 first get yourself off zero, put into self custody, understand that. Then how could you spend in it? How could you meet other people doing it? What's happening in this ecosystem? Um, then contribute more, perhaps give back in this by helping other people understand it. And that's a really great path. And if you want to have a little bit in the other system, because feels like safety, then anybody's welcome to do whatever is right for them.
Yeah. I can see some of it is because AI is doing so well and you see everybody else doing so well. But I can also see at some point that will switch. And what you're saying is everybody gets their own time.
Yeah, and the other thing, just remember, if you have one Bitcoin and you have 1/21 million of all of how much more do you need? If you have two Bitcoin, if you have five Bitcoin, if you have if you have 10 Bitcoin, how much more do you really need? The Because those people that can hang on to it, most won't. They'll sell it for fiat on the way through. But even if you purchased, even if you're buying in Bitcoin all the time, if you're spending and then purchasing more, and so you kept your stack as you're spending, which you could easily do today. Like, how much do you need? What do you want your life to look like? What is it? What? It's not just about money. It's about being able to enjoy the things you want to enjoy with the people you want to enjoy them. It's about the experiences you create in life, the people you touch.
That's a great point, Jeff. That reminds me that one of my audience mentioned storing Bitcoin on a ledger or a Trezor, and what are the attack vectors if they go bankrupt or upside down? Are there better ways to store Bitcoin?
So, when you say if they go bankrupt, personally,
Well, the companies, just having a single point of failure in one company.
so so most of those, I know Trezor is open source software, right? So I don't think Ledger is, but Trezor. So the software, you could still, whether the company goes broke or not, you still have, especially through kind of your backup phrases, you still have all your Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Do you think that for people to really understand Bitcoin at a deep level, there needs to be a spiritual shift?
I think that's one way in. It's not the. I think the other way in is, as they understand Bitcoin, it imposes a spiritual shift because and this is where it's connected. It's very much connected. Um, you never needed Bitcoin to reach enlightenment, right? Did the Buddha need Bitcoin? Right? And if you read about Marcus Aurelius, some of this people throughout history that kind of were talking similarly to some of how Bitcoiners talk about this today, you didn't need Bitcoin for this. You reached a spot where you realize you're all connected, you're all one. Right? Everything somebody else does, it's a mirror back, and we're connected through that. So, could you get there without? Absolutely. Evidence throughout history. Lots of people throughout history that that appeared to be in a different state of the world where no event could touch them. They knew they were in control of their own mind, and you could hurt them, but you couldn't change the way they thought without their permission. So those people were, even though lots of stuff happened, right? They rose above, and still lots of history books talk about those people because they made such an impact on other people's lives. Right? Some of them got killed. Some of them got, potentially many of the religious figures throughout history are those same people. Right? The And so, could you reach that state without Bitcoin? Of course, you could reach that state without Bitcoin. Is it harder to when you have to go back into normal life to pay your bills? And normal life is built on a system of a zero sum game based on theft, of course. So because we're both the map and the territory, we don't see that connection, because we lose the connection to what it's all about in our daily grind to be able to try to make enough in a zero sum game. So of course, if you're in an opposite game that isn't a zero sum game, and you can see you're already enough, You are already everything you need to be. You have everything. It's abundant all around you. And you start to see that, and your life is getting better and better because you're on an honest system, and everybody operating on that system is too. You could see how that would raise consciousness of society in time.
So what you're saying is because now we have more time, to look inward as well. And that for many people is a spiritual shift for them, because many people talk about that. Well, somebody said Bitcoin is a silent invitation to exit the illusion and re-enter alignment.
So I love that. That's a really great line. Yeah, it's a really great line. It's what's always been there. What's always been. I remember personally, I've told this story on a number of podcasts, but in 2017, where I literally went to zero, um, because I wouldn't be bought by by the person trying to control my company. He wanted to give me more of the company to be able to essentially take the company through bankruptcy and wipe out all my friends and all the people who I cared about. And so I walked away with zero, knowing that he would wipe me out too, and I would have nothing. So be what it was, 40, 48, 47 years old, have three small young kids, and be negative, have zero, completely zero, um, and realize that on the back of that, at zero, I had everything I could ever want. I didn't lose, no friends lost, no relationships lost, uh, family, nothing lost, like nothing. Had everything. I could have lived in a tent for the rest of my life, if I had my guitar and family and friends around me. But I didn't lose anything. It was always abundant. It was a perception of what I thought I needed to be successful. And when it was all removed, I had everything still. So
Hmm.
it's really easy to build out back everything else when when you've had completely nothing and life's still amazing.
I hadn't heard that story before. You say that you often say that Bitcoin doesn't care, which feels very Zen. And a lot of people have said to me, you embody the Zen principles. Is that something you've studied or it comes naturally to you?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm always trying to error correct where I've made mistakes. So if I really believe that, and believe this through my own, partially, some of it probably came natural, but partially through my own mistakes, like the one I just said, right? That I was so convinced that I had to do this to get to this result, when it was all an illusion, right? I had everything all the time, and only taking it away could expose that illusion. And so when you learn these things about yourself too, then and you can tell a story with kind of humility about what it looked like I was wrong, right? And what it looked like afterwards. So some of these wars, some of these events have also created this, but I see it in everyone. I literally see what I just described in everybody through their own illusion on what they think they must have to be successful when when they already have it.
Hmm.
And a lot of times what they're doing is they're pushing away with all of their might the thing they want most, under an illusion that they can't get it when it's already all around them.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know you're only on Nostr now, and can you just explain a little bit why you see that Nostr is the future, and why X is more centralizing?
Yeah, so if you just carry on what we're talking about, Bitcoin or the centralized system, that system must extract from you, and it has to centralize, no matter who's in leadership of it. And so what ends up happening, like today, there's a whole bunch of people that are fighting the globalists by concentrating more control in the technocrats, under an illusion that the technocrats will be better in the control system than the globalists. one world government, the WEF versus the technocrats and everything else. And so they're inside this bubble, yelling at other people inside this bubble, while it extracts more and more of their time to further its agenda. And I'm not saying this is bad people, right? I'm saying that incentives around this create more and more of this. And so you're yelling into the void while it's sucking their energy. And if you just added up the time they're doing that to their day, each individual's day, and you're saying, is it providing them value? That perception of value, different. That perception of value will feel like love. It'll feel like connection, because you'll always find somebody in there, no matter how radical, no matter how mad you are, or how you'll find somebody in there that will mirror that and say, you're great.
Hmm.
And it'll suck more and more attention out, and it has to centralize. So as it centralizes, then because that system is centralizing, it has to, anything that's an opposing voice to that centralization has to, the algorithm has to downplay it, because people can't see it, because it's, and so that's why you see people on YouTube creating all of these things, getting super mad and spending more time yelling into YouTube, why are you cutting my voice off? Because your voice has to get cut, because if you're talking about a free market, you're the opposite of that market. And so that same thing will happen on X. And so it's interesting that people believe that Elon's a savior when 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 in China, X is different than it is somewhere else and in a different country, and all for the economic rationale that the centralization and the Elon's cars wouldn't sell in China without that. So you can't be an advocate of free speech in an economic model that is centralizing, because it has to be against free speech. So when I saw Nostr and what Nostr is, now it's early, I saw, I'm going to vote with my time to move into the thing that cannot be stopped. It won't be stopped, built onto Bitcoin, and your voice can't be cut off. And if one of the apps tries to say, no, this doesn't matter anymore, you just close that app and you go to a different app, right? Because all the apps, because you own your data, you own your, the users follow you or your npub. So what that means is that's at the protocol level. There is no app that's trying to manipulate you and farm you for information to centralize their business. They're all in service of you. So that was very much aligned with my ethos of where the market is going to move in time. And as one system gets more centralized, then this system it's early, but it's emerging, it's evolving, it's getting stronger and stronger. And this one's the antidote for this one. So just very similar reason that I'm in Bitcoin. I'm in Bitcoin because it resolves that paradox. And why was I in Bitcoin earlier than many others? Is because I saw it earlier. Right? Why am I in Nostr earlier than many others? So I saw it earlier. Why am I in Fediment earlier than others? Because I saw these things are needed to build the rails to resolve what's coming. And as centralization gets worse and worse, and more people wake up to the fact, oh, it's too late, I'm stuck in this loop, they're going to need to find Bitcoin desperately, and they're going to need to find the alternatives desperately.
And what I hear, just to end up with in all of your share, is decentralized, the more decentralized, the better. And that the more that we all move into what we believe and how we want to see the world, the more peace you have.
Yeah, pretty much. Your world is a reflection of your beliefs and your actions, your words, thoughts, actions. And while that's hard to see, you'll want to for people, I know what's going on in their mind right now, because it used to go on in my mind. They'll take all the things that are really good in their lives, and they'll say, yep, there it is, there it is. But here it's that other person. Here it's that other person. And when you realize here and here is you too, then you'll really understand what I just said. And that is literally a mirror reflection. So you create the world through your intention, what you do, the people you impact every day, what your actions. You create the world you see, and that is a unique view for you. That is different for every single person on this planet from their unique view. And I'm not saying it's untrue. Like your view does create your reality, and mine is true for me. Yours is true for you. Each is true. The question is, what do you want it to be? What do you aspire it to look like? What if you were unstoppable in every different way and you have total peace and love and you were in that energy all the time?
Beautiful world. Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate you being here. I will post links to your website and to your Nostr below.
Awesome. Really good seeing you again.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.